Adanna Obi's hands wouldn't stop shaking as she sat in the sterile examination room of Seoul Medical Center. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, too bright, too clinical, making everything feel surreal. 3 months. She'd been sick for 3 months, ever since that horrible day at the public restroom in Gangnam Station. What started as a simple allergic reaction had spiraled into constant nausea, fatigue that dragged her through every shift at the hotel, and a fear that something was deeply, terribly wrong. Now the doctor sat across from her, his expression carefully neutral in that way medical professionals practiced when they had news that would shatter your world. But before we dive into how a Nigerian woman with nothing became accidentally pregnant with Korea's most dangerous man's child, hit that subscribe button right now, because this story will take you on a journey of impossible circumstances, forced proximity, and a love that neither of them saw coming. Trust me, you'll want to see how this unfolds. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss stories like this one. Now, let's go back to the moment everything changed. Miss Obi, Dr. Park said carefully, adjusting his glasses. The test results came back. You're pregnant. The words didn't register immediately. They hung in the air like a foreign language Adanna couldn't quite translate. That's impossible, she whispered. I'm a virgin. There must be a mistake. Dr. Park's expression shifted from professional neutrality to genuine confusion. Miss Obi, I understand this is shocking, but the tests are conclusive. You're approximately 11 weeks pregnant. 11 weeks? Adanna's voice cracked. That's impossible. I haven't been with anyone, ever. The doctor stood, his movements deliberate. I need to check something. Please wait here. He left her alone in the examination room, and Adanna felt the walls closing in. Her mind raced through the past 3 months. The only medical procedure she'd had was that emergency treatment at this very hospital after the reaction at the public restroom. They'd given her injections, run tests, kept her overnight for observation. Dr. Park returned 20 minutes later, his face ashen. Behind him stood another man, older, with the kind of authority that made people straighten their spines instinctively. Miss Obi, the older man said, his voice grave. I'm Dr. Choi, head of this facility. I'm afraid there's been an unprecedented situation. Adanna's heart pounded. What kind of situation? Dr. Choi pulled up a chair, and that simple gesture told her everything. Doctors only sat down when the news was catastrophic. 3 months ago, when you were treated here for your allergic reaction, there was a procedural error in our fertility clinic. You were given an injection that was meant for a different patient undergoing IVF treatment. The room tilted. You're saying someone else's. You were accidentally inseminated with a viable embryo. Dr. Choi said quietly, I cannot express how deeply sorry we are. This should never have happened. Our hospital takes full responsibility. Adanna couldn't breathe. This wasn't real. This couldn't be real. She was 26 years old, working 3 jobs to send money back to her family in Lagos, barely surviving in Seoul, and now she was pregnant with a stranger's child because of a medical mistake. I want it removed, she said, her voice surprisingly steady. Right now. Today. Dr. Choi exchanged a glance with Dr. Park. Miss Obi, you're past the first trimester. The procedure at this stage carries significant risks. Your body has already adapted to the pregnancy. Terminating now could cause severe complications, possibly life-threatening ones. I don't care about the risks. I can't have this baby. I have nothing. I can barely afford to feed myself, let alone a child. There's something else, Dr. Park said quietly. The embryo, it belongs to someone. Someone who was informed of the situation this morning. Adanna's blood ran cold. Who? The door opened before anyone could answer. The man who walked in commanded attention the way gravity commanded falling objects. tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Adanna made in a year. His face was striking in a sharp, dangerous way. High cheekbones, a jaw that could cut glass, and eyes so dark they seemed to absorb light. But it was his presence that stopped her heart, the way everyone in the room suddenly stood straighter. The way the doctor's expressions shifted from apologetic to terrified. "Miss Obi," he said, his voice low and surprisingly gentle. "My name is Kang Minho. That's my child you're carrying." Adanna stared at him, at this man who looked like he could buy and sell countries before breakfast, at this stranger whose DNA was somehow growing inside her body. "I don't care who you are," she said, finding her voice. "This is a mistake, a horrible, terrible mistake, and I want it fixed." Minho moved closer, and she noticed something. Despite his imposing presence, he moved carefully around her, like she was something fragile he was afraid of breaking. "The doctors have explained the risks," he said. "I won't allow you to endanger your life trying to undo something that's already done." "You won't allow?" Adanna stood, anger burning through her shock. "You have no say in this. This is my body, carrying my child," he said calmly, "which makes this my concern as well." "Your concern? Your concern?" Her voice rose. "I didn't ask for this. I didn't choose this. Some nurse made a mistake, and now my entire life is ruined. And you think you have concerns?" Something flickered in his eyes. Not anger, something softer, almost like understanding. "I know you're frightened," he said quietly. "I know this seems impossible, but I have a proposal. I don't want your money." "You haven't heard the proposal yet." Adanna wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly aware that she was wearing a thin hospital gown, and this powerful stranger was standing too close, looking at her like she was a problem he intended to solve. "I'll cover all your medical expenses," Minho said. "Your living expenses. Everything you need for the next 6 months. You'll stay in a safe, comfortable place. You'll have the best prenatal care. And when the baby is born, if you still want to walk away, you can. No strings, no obligations. Just 6 months where you focus on staying healthy. And in exchange, you don't try to terminate the pregnancy. You let the baby come to term safely." Adanna laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You're asking me to be an incubator for 6 months. I'm asking you to make the safest choice for yourself while giving my child a chance to live." "Your child," she repeated bitterly. "You keep saying that like it means something. Like this is normal." "Nothing about this is normal," Minho agreed. "But it's happening, and I'm offering you a way through it that doesn't end with you in financial ruin or medical danger." Adanna wanted to scream, wanted to throw something, wanted to wake up, and discover this was all a nightmare brought on by bad kimchi. "I need to think," she said. "Take all the time you need," Minho said. He pulled out a business card, set it on the examination table. "My private number. When you're ready to discuss the detail." He left as quietly as he'd arrived, taking all the oxygen in the room with him. Adanna picked up the card. Heavy stock, embossed lettering, Kang Minho, Chairman, Kang Industries. No other information, just a name and a number for people important enough to have direct access. "Who is he really?" she asked Dr. Choi. The older doctor's expression turned grim. "Someone you don't want to refuse, Miss Obi. Someone very powerful. And if the rumors are true, someone very dangerous." Adanna left the hospital in a daze. Seoul's streets were crowded, as always, people rushing past her, like she wasn't standing there with her entire world crumbling. She walked for hours, not really seeing anything, her mind spinning in circles. She couldn't have this baby. She had no money, no support, no way to care for a child. Her family back in Lagos depended on the money she sent home every month. Her younger siblings were in school, because of her remittances. Her mother's medical bills were paid because Adanna worked herself to exhaustion. A baby would destroy everything, but the alternative was risking her own life with a dangerous procedure, leaving her family with nothing if something went wrong. She found herself at a small Nigerian restaurant in Itiwan, the kind of place where expatriates gathered to feel less foreign. She ordered jollof rice she couldn't taste and stared at Kang Minho's business card. "You look like someone told you the world's ending," a voice said. Adanna looked up to find an older Nigerian woman, maybe 50, with kind eyes and the sort of face that had seen enough life to understand suffering. "Something like that," Adanna murmured. The woman sat down, uninvited. "I'm Sister Ngozi. I run a support group for Nigerian women in Seoul. You look like you could use someone to talk to." And maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was the desperate need to tell someone, anyone, what was happening. But Adanna found herself explaining everything. The allergic reaction, the hospital mistake, the impossible pregnancy, the powerful stranger offering to pay her way through a nightmare she never asked for. Sister Ngozi listened without judgment, her expression thoughtful. "This Kang Minho," she said finally, "I know of him. My friend's daughter works at one of his hotels. The staff calls him the Ice King because nothing seems to touch him. But they also say he's fair, ruthless in business, but honorable in his own way. That's supposed to make me feel better? I'm saying if he gave you his word about the terms, he'll keep it. Men like that, their word is their currency." Sister Ngozi reached across the table, took Adanna's hand. "But here's what I'll tell you, child. Whatever you decide, make sure it's your choice. Don't let fear or money or powerful men make the decision for you. You live with the consequences either way." That night, in her tiny studio apartment, Adanna lay awake staring at the ceiling. Her hand unconsciously drifted to her still flat stomach. 11 weeks. Almost 3 months of something growing inside her, without her knowledge. It should have felt invasive. Alien. Wrong. But all she felt was tired. So impossibly tired. At 3 a.m, she picked up her phone and dialed the number on the card. He answered on the first ring. "Miss Obi, how did you know it was me?" "I've been waiting for your call." His voice was different in the darkness. Softer. Almost human. "Have you made a decision?" "I want to see the contract first. Every detail. Every clause. I'm not agreeing to anything blind." "Of course. I'll have my attorney draw up the paperwork. We can meet tomorrow to review it together. And if I don't like the terms, then we negotiate until you do." Adanna closed her eyes. "Why are you doing this? You could just pay the hospital to make this go away quietly. Pay me to disappear. Why go through all this trouble?" The silence stretched so long she thought he'd hung up. "Because that's my child," he said finally, "and I've lost too much already to walk away from this. Even if it's complicated, even if it's impossible." Something in his voice made her chest ache, a loneliness that matched her own. "Tomorrow," she said, "but I'm bringing someone with me. A witness. Bring whoever makes you feel safe." He hung up, and Adanna sat in the darkness, wondering how her life had become a story she wouldn't have believed if someone else was telling it. The next morning, Sister Ngozi accompanied her to the address Minho had provided. Not an office building, a private residence in Hanamdong, one of Seoul's most exclusive neighborhoods. The kind of place where security cameras watched every approach and guards stood at every entrance. They were escorted to a top-floor penthouse with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Han River. The space was minimalist, expensive, cold, like living inside a piece of modern art. Minho was waiting in the living room, now dressed more casually in dark slacks and a white shirt, but casual on him still looked like it cost a fortune. Beside him sat an older man in a suit, holding a briefcase. Miss Obi, Miho said, standing. This is Attorney Kim. He's prepared the contract for your review. Sister Ngozi introduced herself, and Adanna watched Miho's face carefully. He showed no irritation at her bringing a witness. If anything, he seemed to approve. Please sit, he said, gesturing to the sofa. For the next 2 hours, they went through the contract line by line. Attorney Kim explained every clause in detail. Sister Ngozi asked sharp questions that Adanna wouldn't have thought to ask. The terms were exactly as Miho had described. He would provide a fully furnished apartment in a secure building, a monthly allowance for living expenses, full medical coverage at the best hospital in Seoul, a personal driver if she needed transportation, and at the end of 6 months, when the baby was born, she could choose. Keep the child, and he'd provide support, or walk away with a settlement of 100 million won, no strings attached. This is too much, Adanna said quietly. Why would you pay so much? Miho looked at her directly. Because you're doing something I can't. You're giving my child a chance to live. That's worth everything to me. But why? She pressed. Why is this so important? You could have other children. You're young, successful. Why does this specific child matter so much? His expression closed off. That's personal. This entire situation is personal. Adanna shot back. You're asking me to spend 6 months of my life growing a stranger's baby. I think I deserve to know why. The silence was tense. Sister Ngozi watched them both carefully. Finally, Miho spoke, his voice low. I had a wife. 3 years ago. We tried for years to have a child. Finally succeeded. She was 5 months pregnant when there was an accident. A car crash. They saved her life, but we lost the baby. 6 months later, she left me, said she couldn't stay with me and be reminded of what we'd lost. His jaw tightened. That embryo you're carrying, it's the last viable one from our IVF attempt. The only remaining piece of that possibility. When the hospital told me about the mistake, I could have just let it go, could have sued for damages and moved on. But I couldn't, because this might be my only chance to have what I lost. Adanna's anger softened into something more complicated, understanding, maybe, or at least recognition of shared pain. I'm sorry, she said quietly, for your loss. I'm sorry, he replied, that you're caught in the middle of my second chance. Sister Ngozi cleared her throat. The terms seem fair, Adanna, but I'd suggest one addition. You should have the right to leave the arrangement at any time if you feel unsafe or uncomfortable, with a prorated settlement based on how long you've participated. Attorney Kim looked at Miho, who nodded immediately. Agreed. Add that clause. 30 minutes later, the revised contract was ready. Adanna picked up the pen, her hand trembling slightly. Are you sure about this? Sister Ngozi asked softly. Adanna thought about her studio apartment with the broken heater, about the 3 jobs she worked to survive, about the constant fear of not having enough, about the baby growing inside her, whether she signed this paper or not. I'm not sure about anything, she admitted, but this is the least terrible option I have. She signed her name. Miho signed after her. Thank you, Miss Obi. I'll have the apartment ready by tomorrow. You can move in whenever you're comfortable. I need to give notice at my jobs. Already handled. I've paid off your current rent and had your employer compensated for the sudden resignation. Adanna's head snapped up. You did what? I took the liberty of making arrangements so the transition would be smooth. You took the liberty? Her voice rose. You investigated me? Contacted my employer without permission. His expression didn't change. I needed to know what obstacles you'd face in accepting this arrangement. Now, those obstacles are removed. You don't get to control my life. I'm not controlling your life. I'm simplifying it so you can focus on staying healthy. Sister Ngozi stood. Perhaps we should discuss boundaries, Mr. Calm. Adanna has just signed a contract as an independent party. That doesn't give you the right to make decisions for her. For a moment, Adanna thought Minho would argue, but then he nodded slowly. You're right. I apologize, Miss Obi. I overstepped. In the future, I'll consult with you before making any arrangements that affect your life. The apology surprised her. Men with that much power rarely admitted fault. Good, she said firmly, because I may be carrying your child, but I'm not your property. And I'm not your wife. This is a business arrangement. Nothing more. Something unreadable flickered in his eyes. Understood. But as Adanna and Sister Ngozi left the penthouse, she couldn't shake the feeling that she'd just made a deal with someone far more complicated than a simple business contract could contain. The apartment Minho provided was in Gangnam, in a building so secure it had facial recognition software and armed guards. The unit itself was bigger than anywhere Adanna had ever lived. 2 bedrooms, a modern kitchen, furniture that looked like it belonged in design magazines. It felt like a gilded cage. The first week passed in a surreal blur. A doctor visited daily to check on her. Groceries appeared in the refrigerator, as if by magic. Adanna had nothing to do except exist, and the emptiness of it drove her slowly mad. She missed her chaotic life. The rush of hotel shifts, the satisfaction of sending money home to her family, the sense of purpose that came from surviving on her own terms. Now she was just waiting, incubating, existing in a beautiful prison paid for by a man who saw her as a means to an end. 2 weeks in, she couldn't take it anymore. She called the number Minho had given her for emergencies. He answered immediately. Miss Obi, is something wrong? I'm going insane, she said bluntly. I can't just sit here for 6 months doing nothing. The doctor said you need rest. The doctor said I need to avoid stress and heavy labor. Sitting alone in an empty apartment is more stressful than working. I need something to do. What do you want to do? The question surprised her. She'd expected him to argue, to remind her of the contract terms, to insist she follow doctor's orders. I don't know, she admitted, but something, anything. I'm not built to be idle. He was quiet for a moment. Can you meet me tomorrow? I might have a solution. The next day, Minho picked her up himself, driving a black sedan that probably cost more than most houses. He didn't speak much during the drive, but Adanna caught him glancing at her occasionally, his expression unreadable. They ended up at a building in Itaewon. The ground floor was under construction, gutted and empty except for exposed beams and concrete. What is this? Adanna asked. It's going to be a restaurant, Minho said, stepping out of the car. A project I started years ago but never finished. Nigerian cuisine, authentic recipes, a place for the expatriate community. He led her inside, and despite the construction mess, Adanna could see the potential. High ceilings, large windows, a kitchen space that would be perfect for the kind of cooking her mother had taught her. Why are you showing me this? She asked. Because you said you needed something to do. I'm offering you a project. He turned to face her. Design the menu. Help plan the space. This place has been sitting empty for 3 years because I couldn't figure out what it needed. Maybe you can. Adanna stared at him. You want me to plan a restaurant? I want you to have a purpose beyond just carrying my child. And I want this place to finally become what it was meant to be. His expression softened slightly. Besides, I've tried your cooking. The jollof rice you brought to our second meeting. You left the container in the conference room. It was exceptional. She'd forgotten about that. Had been so nervous she'd brought food from home to settle her stomach and then left it behind in her anxiety. This is manipulation, she said, but there was no heat in it. You're trying to make me dependent on you. Grateful. I'm trying to make your situation bearable, he corrected. Is it working? Despite everything, Adanna felt a smile tugging at her lips. Maybe. Over the next month, she threw herself into the restaurant project, met with contractors, researched recipes, designed a menu that blended traditional Nigerian flavors with Korean ingredients. Minho approved every budget request without question, sat through her presentations about egusi soup and suya with genuine interest. They developed a routine. He'd visit the construction site 3 times a week. They'd walk through the space, discuss progress, argue about design choices. He had opinions about everything, and she had no problem telling him when those opinions were wrong. The tables should be arranged differently, he said one afternoon, studying her floor plan. That arrangement maximizes seating while maintaining clear pathways for servers. It's too rigid. People come to a restaurant to relax, not feel like they're in a cafeteria, says the man whose apartment looks like an art gallery showroom. He actually smiled at that, a real smile that transformed his entire face from intimidating to almost warm. Fair point, he conceded. What if we compromise? Your layout, but with rounded tables instead of rectangular ones. I can live with that. These moments felt dangerous, too comfortable, too easy. Adanna had to remind herself constantly that this was temporary, that Minho was paying for her cooperation, not her companionship, that when 6 months ended, so did whatever this was between them. But then her phone rang one evening with news that shattered their careful bubble. Her mother had collapsed. Hospital in Lagos. They were running tests, needed money for treatment immediately. Adanna sat in her beautiful apartment and cried for the first time since this nightmare began. Cried for her mother. Cried for the impossibility of being so far away when her family needed her. Cried for the contract that bound her to Seoul for 5 more months. Her phone rang. Minho, Miss Obi, I just received word from the hospital about your prenatal checkup tomorrow. They're requesting to reschedule. Cancel it, she said, her voice thick. Cancel everything. I need to go home. You can't travel in your condition. The doctor was very clear about that. I don't care about the doctor's orders. My mother is in the hospital. I have to go to her. I'll send my private physician to Lagos, the best cardiac specialist in Seoul. I'll have him on a plane tonight. Adanna's breath caught. You can't. That would cost. Let me do this, he said quietly. Please, let me help. Why? The word came out broken. Why do you keep trying to fix things for me? He was silent for so long she thought the call had dropped. Because I know what it's like to feel helpless, he said, finally, and if I can spare you that feeling, I will. True to his word, Dr. Song was in Lagos within 24 hours. He evaluated Adanna's mother, arranged for the best treatment, handled all the medical bills. He called Adanna daily with updates, his English careful and kind. Her mother stabilized. The crisis passed, and Adanna found herself owing Kang Minho a debt that had nothing to do with the contract between them. When she tried to thank him, he brushed it off. Focus on the restaurant. That's thanks enough. But something had shifted. The wall she'd built between them developed cracks. She started noticing small things. The way he always made sure she'd eaten before their meetings. How he'd adjusted the construction schedule to quieter hours after she mentioned the noise triggered her nausea. The way he looked at her when he thought she wasn't paying attention, like she was a puzzle he was trying to solve. 4 months into the pregnancy, the restaurant was nearly complete. Adanna stood in the dining room, admiring the space they'd created together. Wormwood's colorful textiles, a mural of Lagos on one wall, It felt like home and somewhere new all at once. It's beautiful, Miho said from behind her. You made something extraordinary. She turned to find him closer than she'd expected. Close enough to see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. Close enough to notice the faint scar on his left eyebrow. We made it, she corrected softly. I couldn't have done this without your support. I just provided the resources. You provided the vision. They stood there, the air between them charged with something neither of them was ready to name. Then Adanna's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. A photo, her walking into Miho's building. Another photo, her at the restaurant construction site. A third, her entering a medical clinic. The message beneath was simple. We know about the baby. Park Miho's enemies know too. Watch your back. Adanna's blood ran cold. Miho. He took the phone, his expression darkening as he scrolled through the messages. When did you receive these? Just now. What does it mean? He was already making calls, rapid Korean she couldn't follow. Within minutes, 2 security guards appeared at the restaurant entrance. You're leaving. Now, Miho said, his tone brooking no argument. Leaving where? Somewhere safe. Somewhere they can't find you. Who's they? His jaw tightened. People who want to hurt me by taking what's mine. The possessiveness in that statement should have made her angry. Instead, it sent a shiver down her spine that had nothing to do with fear. They rushed out to his car. Miho drove himself this time, one hand on the wheel, one on his phone, still issuing commands in Korean. They were heading toward the highway when another car cut them off, forcing Miho to swerve. Hold on, he said tersely. More cars appeared, boxing them in. Miho cursed, trying to maneuver around them, but they were surrounded. Men in dark clothing emerged from the vehicles. Professional, armed. This wasn't a random attack. Stay in the car, Miho ordered. Lock the doors. Don't open them for anyone. Wait, where are you? But he was already out, moving with a fluid grace that spoke of training she hadn't known he possessed. She watched in horror as he engaged the first attacker, disarming him with brutal efficiency. But there were too many. Even as Miho fought, they dragged him down. One of them approached Adanna's door, tapped on the window with something metallic. Miss Obi, he said in accented English. Please step out of the vehicle. We don't want to hurt you or the baby. Go to hell, she snapped, fumbling for her phone. The window shattered. Hands grabbed her, pulled her from the car despite her struggles. She saw Miho on the ground, 3 men holding him down, his face bloodied but his eyes locked on her with desperate fury. Let her go, he roared. She has nothing to do with this. She has everything to do with this, someone said. A woman stepping forward from one of the cars. Elegant, cold, with eyes that assessed Adanna like a commodity. She's carrying your heir, Miho. That makes her very valuable to you and to your business rivals. If you hurt her, I'll destroy everything you have. Everyone you love. I swear it. The woman smiled. Then I suggest you cooperate with our demands. Unless you want to watch me take both of them from you. They shoved Adanna into a van. The last thing she saw before the doors closed was Miho breaking free, blood streaming down his face, running toward her with a desperation that broke something in her chest. Then darkness. Adanna came to consciousness in stages. Cold concrete beneath her. The smell of mildew and rust. Distant sounds of traffic, suggesting they were still in Seoul, but somewhere industrial, abandoned. She tried to move and found her hands bound behind her back. Panic surged, but she forced it down. Panic wouldn't help the baby, wouldn't help her. The woman from before stood against a wall, scrolling through her phone. You're awake. Good. The doctor was worried that blow to your head might have caused complications. Who are you? Adanna demanded. Someone your benefactor wronged years ago. The details don't concern you. You're just leverage. I'm a person, not leverage. The woman looked up and for the first time showed something like interest. You actually believe that? How naive. You're pregnant with Kang Minho's child. That's all you are to any of us. A vessel. A bargaining chip. Is that what you told yourself to make kidnapping a pregnant woman acceptable? Something dark flickered in the woman's eyes. I've done worse things for less important reasons. Don't mistake this conversation for caring about your moral judgments. Footsteps outside. The door opened, and two men entered, one holding a tablet. His accounts are frozen. The first man reported in Korean, apparently not realizing Adanna understood basic Korean. He's liquidating assets to meet the ransom demand. How long? 12 hours. Maybe less. He's desperate. The woman smiled coldly. Good. Make sure he stays that way. After they left, Adanna assessed her situation. Her hands were bound, but not impossibly tight. The room had one door, no windows. A camera in the corner, red light blinking steadily. They were monitoring her. Hours passed, maybe days. Adanna lost track. They brought her water and basic food, always checking on the baby with a portable ultrasound. Not out of concern for her well-being, she realized, but to ensure their leverage remained valuable. She was dozing against the cold wall when sounds of chaos erupted outside. Shouting in Korean, gunshots, the kind of violence that made her press herself into the corner, arms wrapped protectively around her belly. The door exploded inward, not metaphorically. Someone had literally blown it off its hinges, and through the smoke walked Minho, blood-spattered, furious, carrying a gun like he'd been born holding one. Behind him, a team of men in tactical gear, the kind you saw in action movies, not real life. His eyes found her instantly. Adanna! The sound of her first name on his lips made her chest constrict. He was across the room in 3 strides, hands on her face, checking for injuries with a gentleness that contradicted the violence still echoing around them. Are you hurt? The baby? We're okay. Minho, what? We're leaving. Now. He cut her bindings with a knife that appeared from somewhere, then lifted her into his arms despite her protest that she could walk. I can. Let me, he said, his voice raw. Please, just let me. The extraction was professional, military grade. His team cleared a path through the building. There were bodies. Adanna tried not to look, tried not to think about what Kang Minho was capable of when someone took what he considered his. They emerged into daylight that hurt her eyes after the darkness. A medical team was waiting, checking her vitals, asking questions about pain and contractions. The baby's heartbeat filled the air, strong and steady through a portable monitor. The baby's fine, the doctor confirmed. Mother's blood pressure is elevated but stabilizing. No signs of premature labor. Minho hadn't let go of her hand through the entire examination. His grip was tight, almost painful, like she might disappear if he loosened his hold. When the medical team finally stepped back, he pulled her into his arms. Not sexually, not possessively, just held her like someone who'd thought they'd lost everything and found it again. I'm sorry, he whispered against her hair. I'm so sorry. I should have protected you better. Should have seen this coming. Adanna's hands came up to his back, feeling the tension in his muscles, the tremor he was trying to hide. It's not your fault, she said softly. You can't control everything. He pulled back, looked at her with eyes that held too much emotion to name. I thought I'd lost you both. When they took you, He couldn't finish. But she understood anyway. The safe house was a compound outside Seoul, the kind of place that had security systems Tony Stark would envy. Adanna was given a suite that was comfortable but clearly reinforced. Bulletproof glass, reinforced doors, a panic button beside the bed. "This is your world," she said when Minho came to check on her that evening. "Violence and kidnapping and bulletproof windows." He stood at the door, keeping distance between them like he was afraid of contaminating her with his darkness. "It is. And you brought me into it, brought your child into it. I didn't know they'd come after you. I've been careful. My enemies know I'm untouchable. I didn't realize they'd go after someone He stopped. "Someone you what?" Adanna pressed. His jaw worked. "Someone I care about." The words sat between them, heavy with implications neither was ready to explore. "The contract says I can leave whenever I feel unsafe," Adanna said. "I'm feeling pretty unsafe right now." Pain flashed across his face. "I understand. I'll arrange for. But I don't want to leave." He froze. "What? What?" Minho repeated, his voice barely above a whisper. Adanna stood, one hand unconsciously resting on her rounded belly. At 5 months, the pregnancy was undeniable now, a visible proof of the impossible situation that had bound them together. "Those people, they took me because I was alone, vulnerable, easy to reach." She met his eyes. "But when I was with you, even when they attacked, I felt safer than I've felt since this whole thing started. You fought for me. You came for me. You didn't abandon me when it would have been easier to just pay the ransom and walk away." "I would never abandon you," he said fiercely. "Never." "I know that now." She took a step closer. "So yes, I'm scared. Terrified, actually. But I'm more terrified of facing this alone than I am of facing it with you." Something in his expression cracked. The careful control he'd maintained for months finally breaking. "You don't know what you're saying. My world, it's dangerous. There will be more threats, more people trying to use you to get to me. Then teach me how to survive in it. Stop treating me like fragile cargo and start treating me like a partner in this situation." "A partner," he echoed, like the word was foreign. "We're having a child together, Minho. Maybe not in the traditional way, but it's happening. And that baby deserves parents who can protect it, who know how to navigate the world it's being born into." She straightened her spine. "So stop sheltering me and start preparing me." For a long moment, he just stared at her. Then, slowly, he nodded. "Okay, but we do this properly. Self-defense training, security protocols, everything you need to know to keep yourself and the baby safe. And you stop making decisions for me without asking first." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "That might be harder than the combat training." "Try anyway." The next month was transformative. Minho was true to his word. He brought in instructors who taught her basic self-defense, modified for pregnancy, showed her the panic systems in every room, the escape routes, the safe rooms, explained his business, the legitimate parts, and the gray areas where power and influence blurred into something darker. "My family built this empire over 3 generations," he told her one evening as they reviewed security footage from the compound. "Started with shipping, expanded into real estate, hospitality. But in Korea, that kind of growth requires connections, favors, relationships with people who operate outside the law. Like the mafia," Adanna said. "We prefer the term business consortium," he said dryly. "But yes, essentially. I've tried to clean up our operations, move us toward legitimacy. But old alliances have long memories. The people who took you, they were from a rival faction. One I cut ties with 2 years ago when they wanted to expand into human trafficking. You refused them. I have lines I won't cross. That was one of them." His expression darkened. "They've been looking for ways to hurt me ever since. You gave them the perfect opportunity." Adanna processed this, her hand resting on her belly where the baby was doing acrobatics. So as long as I'm carrying your child, I'm a target. As long as you're connected to me in any way, you're a target, he corrected. The baby just makes it more immediate. What happens after I give birth? Will I be safe then? He looked away, jaw tight. That depends on what you choose. The contract, the choice she'd have to make in 2 months. Keep the child and stay connected to Miho's world, or take the settlement and walk away, severing all ties. It should have been an easy decision. Take the money, run, rebuild her life somewhere safe. But nothing about this situation had ever been easy. What do you want me to choose? She asked softly. His eyes met hers, and for the first time, she saw past all his careful control to the loneliness beneath. I want you to choose what makes you happy, what keeps you safe, even if that means walking away from me. But what do you want, Miho? He stood abruptly, walked to the window overlooking the compound. His reflection in the glass was stark, isolated. I want things I have no right to want, he said finally. I want you to stay. Want to watch my child grow up. Want to. He stopped, his hands clenching into fists. But what I want doesn't matter. You never asked for any of this. The pregnancy, the danger, me. You deserve a normal life, not this. Adanna rose, moving to stand beside him. What if I don't want normal anymore? What if I want this complications and all? He turned to her, something desperate in his eyes. Don't say that unless you mean it. Don't give me hope just to be kind. I'm not being kind. I'm being honest. She took his hand, placed it on her belly where the baby was kicking. Feel that? That's your child. Our child, in the strangest way possible. And somewhere along the way, between the contract and the kidnapping and the restaurant we built together, this stopped being just a business arrangement for me. Adanna, I'm not saying I love you, she interrupted. I don't know what I'm feeling yet, but I know I don't want to walk away in 2 months. I want to see where this goes. If you do too. For answer, he pulled her into his arms, holding her carefully like she was the most precious thing in his world, which she realized maybe she was. I want that more than anything, he whispered against her hair. They stood like that for a long time, the city lights glittering below them, the baby moving between them, and something fragile and new taking root where only obligation had existed before. The peace lasted 3 weeks. Adanna was in the compound's garden, enjoying the late autumn sunshine while reading baby care books, when her phone rang. An unknown number. She should have ignored it, should have followed security protocols, and reported it immediately. But something made her answer. Miss Obi, a woman's voice, familiar, the kidnapper. I hope you're enjoying your temporary safety. Adanna's blood ran cold. How did you get this number? I have people everywhere, dear, even in Miho's organization. Did you really think he could protect you completely? What do you want? What I've always wanted, to hurt him where it matters. And you, with that growing belly, you matter to him more than he wants to admit. The woman's voice turned cold. But here's something he hasn't told you. That medical accident that got you pregnant, it wasn't an accident. Adanna's heart stopped. What? The hospital, the mistake, all of it was arranged. By Miho. He paid them to inseminate you with his embryo, then paid them to make it look like an accident. You were chosen, Miss Obi, specifically selected because you were vulnerable, foreign, easy to control. You're lying. Am I? Ask him why he was at that hospital the day you came in for your allergic reaction. Ask him why he was so quick with a contract, so prepared with solutions. Ask him how he knew you'd need money, knew about your family situation, knew exactly which pressure points to use. The call ended. Adanna sat frozen, mind racing. It couldn't be true. Miho wouldn't, but even as she denied it, pieces started fitting together. The too convenient contract, the perfectly timed solutions to her problems. The way he'd known things about her life she'd never told him. She was still sitting there when Minho found her an hour later. Adanna, is everything all right? The security team said you've been out here for. Was it real? She interrupted, standing to face him. Any of it? The accident, the mistake, the apologies. His expression shuddered. What are you talking about? I got a call. From her. The woman who took me. Adanna's voice shook. She said you arranged the pregnancy, that you paid the hospital to make it look like an accident, that I was selected, manipulated, controlled from the very beginning. The silence stretched between them, heavy as lead. Tell me she's lying. Adanna whispered. Please, tell me this was all real. Minho's jaw worked, his hands clenching and unclenching at his sides. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely audible. I didn't pay them to inseminate you. Relief flooded through her. Then she was. But I knew it had happened. Before they told you. Before anyone told you. The relief vanished, replaced by ice. What? The hospital contacted me immediately when they realized the mistake. They were terrified, wanted to fix it before anyone found out. They offered to terminate the pregnancy quietly, pay you off, make it all disappear. He took a breath. I told them no, told them to let it proceed, to inform you only when termination would be too dangerous, to make sure you'd have no choice but to carry the baby to term. Adanna felt like the ground had disappeared beneath her feet. You knew. You let me go through months of sickness, confusion, terror, and you knew the whole time. I was going to lose everything, he said, his voice breaking. My only chance at having a child, gone because of some nurse's mistake. And then they told me about you, a Nigerian woman, alone, vulnerable, financially struggling, someone who could be managed, controlled, someone who could be manipulated. Adanna said numbly, yes. The admission was raw. I manipulated you, researched your background, knew exactly what to offer, how much money would be enough to tempt you, but not so much you'd question it. The restaurant, your mother's medical bills, all of it calculated to make you dependent, grateful, compliant. Tears streamed down Adanna's face. Why are you telling me this now? Because she's right. You deserve the truth. Minho's own eyes were wet. And because somewhere in the middle of using you, I fell in love with you. Real love, not the pretend kind I convinced myself was enough. And I can't keep lying to the woman I love, even if the truth destroys us. You don't get to say you love me, Adanna said, her voice breaking. You don't get to manipulate me for months and then claim it's love. I know I don't. He took a step toward her, hands raised like he was approaching something wild. But it's true anyway. And I'm sorry. God, Adanna, I'm so sorry. If I could go back, if I could do it differently. But you can't. She wrapped her arms around her belly, protective. You can't undo months of lies. Can't undo the fact that you stole my choice. My autonomy. You're no better than the people who kidnapped me. Worse, actually, because you made me trust you. I'll do anything to make this right, he said desperately. Anything. Name it, and it's yours. I want the truth. All of it. No more secrets. No more manipulation. I want to know every single thing you've done, every decision you made for me, every lie you told. Okay. Yes. Anything. And then, Adanna said, her voice steady despite the tears, I want you to stay away from me until I decide if I can ever forgive you. The pain on his face was visceral, but he nodded. I'll stay at the Seoul residence. You'll remain here with full security. Anything you need, just ask, but I won't contact you unless you reach out first. Good. He turned to leave, then paused at the garden entrance. For what it's worth, everything I told you about my wife, about losing the baby, that was real. And what I feel for you now, that's real too. I know you don't believe me. I wouldn't believe me either. But it's true. Then he was gone, and Adanna was alone in the garden with the baby moving inside her and the ruins of trust scattered at her feet. The next month was the loneliest of Adanna's life. She had everything she needed physically: medical care, security, food, comfort. But emotionally, she was adrift. Sister Ngozi visited regularly, having somehow talked her way past Miho's security. He looks terrible, the older woman reported after one visit to Seoul to check on some community members. Like he hasn't slept in weeks. The staff says he's working 20-hour days, barely eating. Good, Adanna said coldly. Is it? Sister Ngozi settled into the chair across from her. I'm not defending what he did. The manipulation, the lies, all of it was wrong. But I've seen enough of life to know that people are complicated. Good people do terrible things. Terrible people sometimes do good things. Very rarely is anyone purely one or the other. He stole my choice, made me a prisoner in a prettier cage. He did, and that's unforgivable until you decide to forgive it. Sister Ngozi leaned forward. But here's my question, child. What do you want now? Not what you should want, not what's fair or just. What does your heart want? Adanna's hands rested on her belly, now prominently rounded at 7 months. The baby kicked constantly, strong and active. Her daughter, the ultrasound had finally revealed. A little girl who would be born into this complicated, messy situation. I want to hate him, she admitted quietly. I want to take the settlement and disappear and never think about him again. But I can't stop thinking about him anyway. The way he held me after the kidnapping. How he looked at me in the garden when I asked what he wanted. The restaurant we built together. All the little moments that felt real, even if they were built on lies. Maybe they were real, Sister Ngozi suggested gently. Maybe the foundation was rotten, but what grew from it was genuine. Love doesn't stop being real just because it started wrong. How do I trust him again? How do I trust myself to know what's real and what's manipulation? You probably can't. Not completely. But that's true of any relationship, isn't it? We're all taking risks when we open our hearts. The only question is whether the risk is worth the potential reward. After Sister Ngozi left, Adanna sat in the nursery. She'd been slowly preparing. Soft yellows and greens, neutral but warm. A crib Miho had sent over with a note. For our daughter, if you'll let me meet her. Our daughter, not his daughter. Our. The possessiveness should have angered her. Instead, it just made her sad. At 8 months pregnant, Adanna finally called him. He answered on the first ring. Adanna. Just her name, but she could hear everything in it. Hope, fear, longing. I need to see you, she said. We need to talk before the baby comes. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Make it an hour. I need time to prepare what I want to say. When he arrived, he looked exactly as Sister Ngozi had described. Exhausted, thinner, haunted. But his eyes lit up when he saw her, traveled immediately to her prominent belly. You're beautiful, he said softly. I'm 8 months pregnant and angry at you. I doubt I'm beautiful. You're always beautiful to me. Adanna gestured to the sofa. They sat, carefully maintaining distance between them. I've been thinking, she started, about everything you told me, everything you did, and I'm still angry. I might always be angry about how this started. His expression fell, but he nodded. I understand. But I've also been thinking about who you've been since I found out the truth. You stayed away like I asked, didn't try to manipulate or pressure, just gave me space and resources, and waited. It was the least I could do. Most men in your position wouldn't have done even that much. They'd have used the baby as leverage, reminded me I'm financially dependent on you, applied pressure. She took a breath. But you didn't. You let me have power in this situation, even though it cost you. Adanna, what are you saying? I'm saying I don't know if I can forgive you completely. I don't know if I'll ever fully trust that you're not manipulating me. But I do know that I don't want to do this alone. Don't want to raise our daughter without you. And somewhere in this mess, I think I fell in love with you too. The real you, not the perfect version you were trying to present. Hope blazed in his eyes. You love me? I think so. I'm still figuring it out. But I want the chance to figure it out with you, if you're willing to earn back my trust one day at a time. I'll spend the rest of my life earning it. If I have to, it might take that long, she warned. Then I'll start now. He moved closer, slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, he took her hand. No more lies. No more manipulation. Just honesty, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. And I make my own decisions. About the baby, about us, about everything. Always. I promise. Adanna squeezed his hand. Then maybe we can try this. Really try, without contracts or obligations. Just two people figuring out how to be parents, and maybe something more. He lifted her hand to his lips, pressed a kiss to her knuckles. That's all I've wanted since the moment I realized I loved you. When was that? The day at the restaurant, when you argued with me about the table arrangements. You were covered in paint, exhausted, 7 months pregnant, and absolutely refusing to back down. And I thought, this woman is extraordinary, and I'm falling in love with her. Despite everything, Adanna smiled. I was right about those tables. You were, he agreed. You're right about most things. They sat together as the sun set over the compound, hands intertwined, their daughter moving between them, and the careful beginning of something real finally taking shape. Labor started 3 weeks later, swift and brutal. Adanna woke at 2 in the morning with contractions that felt like her body was being torn apart. Minho was there within minutes, having been staying in the compound's guest house for the past week at her invitation. It's too early, she gasped as another contraction hit. She's not due for 2 more weeks. Some babies are impatient, Minho said, already on the phone with the medical team, just like their mothers. The hospital was a blur, pain and pressure and Minho's hand in hers, his voice steady and calm even when she screamed and cursed him for ever existing. I hate you, she panted between contractions. I know. This is your fault. Completely my fault. If we survive this, I'm never having sex with you. We haven't had sex yet. Then I'm definitely not starting now. He laughed, kissed her forehead. Whatever you say. Their daughter was born at dawn, tiny and perfect, and absolutely furious at being forced into the world. 7 pounds, 3 ounces of pure indignation, with Minho's eyes and Adanna's nose and lungs that could wake the dead. She's beautiful. Minho breathed, tears streaming down his face as the nurse placed the baby in Adanna's arms. Adanna looked down at the tiny face, red and scrunched and absolutely perfect, and felt her heart expand in ways she hadn't known were possible. Hello, little one, she whispered. I'm your mama. And that's your daddy, even though he's very complicated, and we're still figuring out how this works. What should we name her? Minho asked, his finger gently touching the baby's tiny hand. Immediately, the infant's fingers wrapped around his, gripping tight. Amara, Adanna said. It means grace in Igbo. Because despite everything, despite the impossible way she came to be, she's a grace we didn't deserve. Amara, Minho repeated, testing the name. It's perfect. She's perfect. In that moment, with their daughter between them and dawn breaking outside the windows, Adanna finally understood what Sister Ngozi had meant. Love didn't need to be simple to be real. It just needed to be true. 6 months later, Adanna stood in the restaurant that had brought them together, watching Minho navigate the dinner rush with surprising competence. He'd learned to cook basic Nigerian dishes, insisted on helping during busy evenings despite having an empire to run. "Your jollof is getting better," she said, tasting the rice he'd just plated. "High praise from the master," he replied, grinning. Amara slept peacefully in a carrier on Adanna's chest, tiny fist curled against her mother's heart. She was 6 months old now, hitting every milestone with the same determination her mother possessed. Minho was absolutely wrapped around her tiny fingers, leaving board meetings early to make bath time, reading business reports in baby voices because Amara seemed to enjoy the sound. "I never thought my life would look like this," Adanna admitted as they closed up for the night. "Running a restaurant with the man who accidentally fathered my child through medical malpractice. When you put it that way, it sounds very strange. It is very strange. We're very strange." He pulled her close, careful not to disturb the sleeping baby. "Strange but happy?" "Happy," she confirmed. "Complicated and messy, and sometimes still angry about how this started, but happy." "I'll take it," he said, kissing her forehead. "I'll take complicated and messy and happy over perfect and empty any day." Amara stirred between them, making the small sounds that meant she'd wake soon wanting to be fed. Adanna felt Minho's hand rest on their daughter's back, protective and gentle. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for giving me a second chance, for letting me be part of this." "Thank you for earning it," Adanna replied, "and for continuing to earn it every day. Always," he promised, "for the rest of my life." They locked up the restaurant, stepped out into Seoul's glittering night. Somewhere in the city, there were still threats, still people who might want to hurt them, still complications from Minho's world that occasionally crashed into their lives. But they faced it together now, a family built on impossible circumstances, held together by choice and effort, and the kind of love that didn't make sense on paper but worked perfectly in practice. Amara woke as they reached the car, her eyes, so like her father's, blinking up at them both. And when she smiled, a gummy, joyful expression that lit up her entire face, both her parents smiled back, completely besotted. "She has your smile," Minho observed. "She has your stubborn streak," Adanna countered. "God help us all." "God already did," Adanna said, looking at her daughter, then at the man she'd somehow fallen in love with despite everything. "He gave us Amara. He gave us each other. He gave us grace we didn't deserve, and a second chance we definitely didn't earn. Then I guess we'd better make the most of it," Minho said, securing Amara's car seat with practiced efficiency. "I guess we better," Adanna agreed. And as they drove through Seoul's streets toward the home they now shared, with their daughter babbling happily in the back seat, Adanna realized that sometimes the best love stories weren't the ones that started perfectly. They were the ones where broken people found wholeness together, where mistakes became miracles, and where an accidental beginning led to a deliberately chosen forever. If you made it to the end of Adanna and Minho's story, then you know that love doesn't always follow the rules. Sometimes it starts in the most impossible ways, through medical mistakes and manipulation and circumstances that should never have brought two people together. But when it's real, when it's worth fighting for, love finds a way. Hit that subscribe button right now because we bring you stories that prove love can survive anything. Stories about people who fight for each other, forgive each other, and choose each other every single day, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. Drop a comment below and tell me, could you forgive someone who manipulated you if they genuinely changed? Would you take a chance on a love that started wrong but became right? Share your thoughts because your perspective matters. And smash that like button because that's how we build this community. That's how we find each other. That's how we remind ourselves that even the messiest beginnings can lead to beautiful endings. Until next time, remember that You are not defined by how your story starts. You're defined by what you do with the chapters that come after. Choose love. Choose forgiveness when it's earned. Choose the messy, complicated, beautiful life that's actually worth living. See you in the next story.